The sun beat down mercilessly on the Atacama Desert as Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted her solar shield. The archaeological site sprawled before her, a complex network of scaffolding and equipment surrounding what everyone had initially thought was just another strange rock formation. That was 3 weeks ago, before the ground-penetrating radar had revealed its true nature. The energy readings are still increasing. Dr. Rodriguez called from his monitoring station. Whatever power source they used, it's still active after all this time. Sarah nodded, her mind already racing through quantum mechanical equations. She had been called in as a last resort after traditional archaeological methods had failed to make sense of the structure. Now, standing before the exposed section of what could only be an ancient control panel, she understood why. The surface was made of some crystal-like material, but unlike anything she had ever seen. Geometric patterns traced through its depths, reminiscent of the quantum circuit diagrams she had been working with at her lab in Cambridge. But these were far more complex, more elegant. "Pass me the quantum resonance scanner," she called to her assistant. The device was her own design, considered unorthodox by many of her peers. It was based on her theories about consciousness quantum interaction, something most of the scientific community still regarded with skepticism. As she ran the scanner over the crystal surface, her tablet displayed a series of readings that made her heart race. "This is impossible," she whispered, but the data didn't lie. The patterns within the crystal were shifting in response to her presence, like a living thing responding to touch. "Dr. Chen," one of the junior researchers called out, "We found something else." Following the voice, Sarah made her way to a newly excavated section. The sand had been cleared away to reveal what looked like a doorway, but it was the material that caught her eye. The same crystalline surface, but here it formed perfect geometric patterns that seemed to catch the light in impossible ways. She pressed her hand against the surface, more out of instinct than scientific method. The crystal was cool despite the desert heat, and she could have sworn she felt a slight vibration under her palm. "Everyone, step back," she ordered, pulling out her scanner again. This time, she modified its settings based on her earlier readings. The results made her sit down hard in the sand, drawing concerned looks from her colleagues. "Dr. Chen, are you all right?" Rodriguez asked, hurrying over. "I know what this is," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not just some ancient building or monument. These aren't just control panels or doorways. This is a bridge. A bridge to where?" Sarah looked up at the team gathering around her, a mix of fear and excitement making her voice shake. "Not that kind of bridge. This is a ship's bridge. We're standing inside the command center of something that was never built on Earth." The silence that followed was broken only by the wind, until one of the junior researchers found his voice. "You mean?" "Yes," Sarah said, standing up and brushing sand from her coveralls. "We've just found humanity's first alien spaceship, and based on these readings," she checked her tablet again, making sure she wasn't imagining things, "it's still operational." As if in response to her words, a low hum began to emanate from the structure around them. Deep within the crystal walls, lights began to flicker like stars coming to life, creating patterns that matched the quantum fluctuations her scanner was detecting. Sarah realized she was holding her breath, along with everyone else at the site. They had just made the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. But something told Sarah this was just the beginning. The real challenge would be understanding what they had found, and why it seemed to be responding to human presence in ways that defied everything they thought they knew about ancient technology. The desert wind picked up, carrying sand and promise on its breath. Humanity's first steps into a much larger universe had just begun, and Sarah Chen was standing at the threshold. The morning sky erupted in a symphony of colors that had nothing to do with the sunrise. Sarah stood among a crowd of scientists and military personnel, watching as 7 ships descended through the atmosphere. They moved like liquid mercury, their hulls reflecting the dawn in cascading rainbows. "This is really happening," Dr. Rodriguez whispered beside her, his scientific detachment finally cracking. "First contact." Sarah wanted to correct him. This wasn't first contact. Not really. The ships had announced their arrival 24 hours ago, broadcasting in perfect English and 12 other languages. They called themselves the Arcturi, and they had come for the ship. The alien vessels touched down with perfect precision, arranging themselves in a precise heptagon around the excavation site. As their landing gear settled into the desert sand, Sarah couldn't help but compare their technology to the ancient ship they'd been studying. The Arcturi ships were beautiful, but they lacked that strange, crystalline quality that made the buried vessel so fascinating. A delegation emerged from the central ship, moving with an ethereal grace that made them seem almost weightless. Their environmental suits were so elegant, they looked more like flowing robes, embedded with technology that put Earth's best equipment to shame. The leader of the delegation approached the human welcome party, standing nearly 8 feet tall. Their suit's faceplate was transparent, revealing features that were almost human-like, but with an iridescent quality to their skin that shifted like oil on water. "We greet you, people of Earth." The Arcturi leader's voice was melodic, their translation device making their words flow naturally. "I am first speaker Naleth. We have come a great distance to study this discovery of yours." General Martinez stepped forward with the practiced diplomacy of someone who had been preparing for this moment their entire career. "Welcome to Earth, first speaker. We're honored by your visit." "The honor," Naleth said, their eyes fixed not on the general but on Sarah, "is perhaps ours. We have received the data your scientists shared about your progress with the vessel." Sarah felt a chill despite the desert heat. Something in the way Naleth said progress carried an edge. The delegation was escorted to the excavation site, where Sarah's team had managed to access several more chambers of the ancient ship. The crystals still pulsed with that strange inner light, responding to human presence in ways they hadn't been able to explain. "Impossible," one of the Arcturi scientists whispered, breaking protocol. "The systems are active, truly active." Naleth's composure cracked for just a moment. "In all our studies of precursor sites, across hundreds of worlds, we have never seen their technology respond like this. How did you activate it?" Sarah explained her theories about quantum consciousness interaction, showing them the simple scanner she'd built. She expected to impress them with human ingenuity. Instead, she watched their body language shift from curiosity to something that looked almost like concern. "You achieved this with such basic tools?" Another Arcturi scientist asked, their tone making it clear basic was a polite substitution for primitive. "Sometimes the simplest approach is best," Sarah replied, fighting to keep her voice even. "The ship seems to respond more to natural neural patterns than artificial inputs." The Arcturi exchanged glances that Sarah couldn't read. Naleth stepped forward, their voice taking on a more formal tone. "Under galactic law, we must inform you that this vessel is of precursor origin. The precursors were the most advanced species known to have existed. They vanished 50,000 years ago, leaving only their ruins. All such discoveries must be reported to the Galactic Council for proper study." "We're happy to cooperate," General Martinez began, but Naleth wasn't finished. However, the first speaker continued, "Given the unusual nature of your interaction with the vessel, we request direct oversight of all further research. For safety reasons, you understand." Sarah felt her heart sink. She recognized a polite takeover when she heard one. But as she opened her mouth to object, the crystal walls around them suddenly flared to life, responding to her surge of emotion with a display that left even the Arcturi speechless. The Arcturi had transformed the excavation site into something that looked more like a spaceport. Their analysis equipment towered over the desert floor, casting long shadows in the morning light. Sarah watched from her small workstation as their machines hummed and pulsed, prodding the ancient ship with energies she could barely comprehend. Fascinating, she muttered, making another note in her journal. For 3 days, she'd been observing their methods, and something wasn't adding up. Their technology was incredibly advanced, but their approach felt wrong. They treated the ship like a problem to be solved, a code to be cracked. Sarah glanced down at her modified tablet and the simple quantum scanner she'd built. Next to the Archery's equipment, her tools looked like children's toys, but they had gotten results that still baffled the alien scientists. Dr. Chen, one of the Archery researchers, who had introduced himself as Senior Analyst Vex, approached her station. "Our latest scans show no progress. Perhaps if you shared more details about your initial success." Sarah smiled politely. "I've provided all my data, Senior Analyst, but maybe we're all looking at this the wrong way." She stood up, walking toward the ship's exposed crystal interface. "Have you noticed how the patterns change?" "Of course. The energy signatures shift constantly, making analysis difficult." "Not randomly," Sarah said, placing her hand near the crystal surface. The patterns beneath swirled in response, creating ripples of light that spread out like waves on a pond. "They're responding, like music." Vex's expression showed polite skepticism. "Music is hardly a scientific approach, Doctor." "Isn't it?" Sarah connected her tablet to her scanner, pulling up a visual display of the quantum states she'd been recording. "Look at the harmonics. The way the energy flows. It's not just data, it's a conversation." She adjusted her scanner settings, creating a real-time display of the quantum fluctuations within the crystal. The patterns appeared as flowing lines of light, interweaving in complex but strangely familiar ways. "These patterns," she explained, "they match theoretical models of quantum consciousness interaction. The same patterns we see in human brains during deep meditation or creative thinking." Vex leaned closer, his professional detachment cracking slightly. "But our bioneural interfaces should be far more sophisticated than human neural patterns." "Maybe that's the problem," Sarah said, making another adjustment to her scanner. "Your interfaces are designed to control, to impose order. But look what happens when I do this." She closed her eyes, letting her mind wander through the quantum patterns she'd memorized. The crystal surface began to pulse in sync with her thoughts, creating cascades of light that danced through the ancient material. "Impossible," Vex whispered, his composure finally breaking. "You're not using any interface at all." "No," Sarah agreed, opening her eyes to watch the display. "I'm just listening. The ship doesn't want to be controlled. It wants to be understood." The patterns shifted again, and suddenly new crystals began to light up along the wall, creating a path that led deeper into the ship. Several Archery scientists rushed over, their equipment buzzing with activity. "How are you doing this?" First Speaker Nalith demanded, having appeared without Sarah noticing. "I'm not doing anything," Sarah said, still watching the dancing lights. "I'm just learning its language. The precursors built this ship to respond to natural thought patterns, not artificial ones. The more we try to force it, the less it responds." As if to prove her point, the lights dimmed when one of the Archery tried to scan them, only to flare back to life when they stepped away. "You're saying," Nalith said slowly, "that all our advanced technology, all our centuries of progress, are actually working against us." Sarah shrugged, unable to keep a small smile from her face. "Sometimes the best way forward is to take a step back. The precursors weren't just advanced, they were different. Maybe understanding them requires us to think differently too." The lights continued their dance, creating patterns that reminded Sarah of stars wheeling across a night sky. She had a feeling they were just beginning to understand what the precursors had left behind. Sarah had been staring at her data displays for so long that the numbers had started to blur together. The patterns were there, just at the edge of her understanding, like a word on the tip of her tongue. She'd sent everyone else to get some rest, preferring the quiet of the night shift to work through her theories. The ship's crystal walls pulsed with a soft, almost peaceful glow in the darkness. Over the past week, she'd started to notice how the light changed with her moods, brightening when she was excited, dimming when she was tired. At first, she dismissed it as her imagination. But it's not just responding to presence, she muttered to herself, adding another node to her already crowded tablet. It's responding to state of mind. She stood up, stretching her stiff muscles, and walked over to the main crystal interface. The Orcs' massive analysis machines stood silent around her, their daily scans having revealed nothing new. But Sarah had been noticing something in her own readings, something so simple it was almost ridiculous. "Computer," she said to her tablet, "pull up the quantum state recordings from the past week. Display them as a time series." The display filled with flowing lines of data, each representing the complex quantum states within the ship's crystals. But this time, she added something new. Her own neural patterns, recorded by her modified scanner. "Overlay the data sets," she commanded, and watched as the lines merged together. Her heart started to beat faster as the pattern became clear. "They're the same," she whispered in awe. "The ship's quantum states are matching our neural patterns, not just responding to them, actually synchronizing with them." She placed her hand against the crystal surface, but this time, instead of just observing the response, she tried something new. She focused her thoughts, imagining the quantum states she'd been studying, visualizing them aligning with her own neural patterns. The effect was immediate and stunning. The crystal under her palm burst into brilliant light, and she felt something. A connection, as if her consciousness had suddenly expanded beyond the boundaries of her own mind. "That's it," she gasped, the revelation hitting her like a physical force. The precursors didn't build an artificial intelligence. They built a quantum consciousness interface. The ship doesn't just respond to thoughts, it resonates with them. As if in response to her understanding, the light began to spread. Not just the usual gentle pulsing, but a wave of brilliant illumination that raced through every crystal surface in sight. Systems that had been dormant for millennia came to life, creating a display of light and energy that lit up the desert night like a new sun. Warning alarms blared from the Orcs' equipment as their sensors detected the massive energy surge. Sarah barely noticed the sound of running feet as security teams and scientists rushed to the site. She was too absorbed in the connection she'd established, understanding flowing into her mind like water. "Dr. Chen." First speaker Nelith's voice cut through her concentration. "What have you done?" Sarah turned to face the growing crowd, her eyes shining with wonder and her hand still connected to the ship's interface. "I figured it out," she said, her voice filled with excitement. The Orcs' bioneural interfaces were too complex, too artificial. The ship doesn't need complicated technology to interface with it. It needs raw consciousness, pure thought. That's why your AI systems could never activate it. The ship's light pulsed in perfect harmony with her words, creating patterns that seemed to dance through the air around them. Displays and controls that had been hidden within the crystal walls began to emerge, responding to her understanding of their purpose. "The precursors," she continued, wonder in her voice. "They didn't just build advanced technology. They found a way to link consciousness directly to quantum states, and somehow human minds are compatible with their system." The assembled crowd stared in a mix of awe and disbelief as the ancient ship, silent for 50,000 years, sang with light and energy, awakening to human touch in a way it never had for any other species. The desert sky had become a canvas of alien ships, each more exotic than the last. Sarah watched from her workstation as another fleet arrived, their hulls shimmering like mother-of-pearl in the morning sun. In the 2 days since her breakthrough, representatives from 27 different species had arrived on Earth. "The Maidari have just requested landing clearance," Dr. Rodriguez reported, checking his terminal. That makes 5 new species today alone. Sarah nodded, her attention split between the arrivals and her ongoing work with the ship. The crystal interface under her hand pulsed warmly, almost like a greeting. She'd grown more comfortable with the neural connection, learning to interpret the subtle ways the ship communicated. "They're all coming to see the primitive humans who woke a precursor ship," she said, a hint of irony in her voice. A new pattern flickered through the crystals, drawing her attention. Every day brought new discoveries as she learned to better understand the ship's quantum language. The latest pattern seemed to be some kind of star chart, though its purpose wasn't yet clear. "Dr. Chen," a familiar voice called. First speaker Nalith approached, accompanied by what appeared to be a delegation of crystalline beings, the Maidari, presumably. "These researchers have traveled far to observe your methods." Sarah straightened, noting how the ship's light patterns shifted in response to her slight tension. The Maidari were beautiful, their crystalline forms refracting the light in complex ways that reminded her of the ship's interfaces. "We are most curious," one of the Maidari spoke, their voice a chiming harmony. "Our species has studied precursor technologies for 10,000 years. Yet in days, you have achieved what we could not." "Perhaps that's exactly why," Sarah replied, an idea taking shape as she spoke. "Your species, like the Arcturi, has achieved incredible technological advancement. But in doing so, you may have evolved past what the precursors were looking for." She gestured to the ship's interface, where the star chart was still spinning slowly. "Human technology is young, our understanding of the universe still growing. Our minds are adaptable, less fixed in their ways of thinking." The Maidari's crystal forms sparkled with what might have been interest. "You suggest our advanced development is a disadvantage." "Not a disadvantage," Sarah corrected, choosing her words carefully. "Just a different path. The precursors built this ship to interface with raw consciousness, unfiltered by advanced neural networks or AI systems. Human minds are still natural, for lack of a better word." As if to demonstrate her point, she focused her thoughts on the star chart. The display expanded, filling the air around them with points of light. She felt the ship responding to her curiosity, showing her more detail, helping her understand. "Remarkable," one of the Maidari whispered. "The neural synchronization is perfect." Naleth stepped forward, their expression unreadable. "This makes your species uniquely dangerous. You have no experience with this level of technology, yet you can access its full power." The ship's lights flickered in what Sarah had come to recognize as disagreement. "No," she said, understanding flowing through the neural link. "It makes us uniquely suited to learn. The ship, it's not just a vehicle, it's a teacher." The star chart shifted again, and Sarah gasped as new information flowed into her mind. "These aren't just random stars," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "They're locations, other precursor sites, waiting to be found. But they can only be accessed by minds that can form the proper neural connection." She looked at the assembled aliens, seeing the implications dawn in their various expressions. Humanity hadn't just stumbled upon a single ship. They'd found a key to an entire network of precursor technology, spread across the galaxy. And they were, perhaps, the only species still capable of using it. The ultimatum had come at dawn. 7 days to prove the ship could actually fly, or Earth would lose all rights to study it. Sarah sat in what she'd come to think of as the bridge, her hand resting on the main interface crystal as she processed the news. "They're scared," Dr. Rodriguez said, breaking the tense silence. "The Arcturi, the Maidari, all of them. They've built their entire civilization on being the most advanced species in known space." The ship's crystals pulsed with gentle light, almost like it was trying to comfort her. Over the past days, the neural connection had grown stronger, more natural. Sometimes she caught echoes of something, memories, perhaps, or echoes of the last minds to touch these controls. "We need to understand more than just basic systems," she said, standing to pace the bridge. "If we're going to prove this ship can fly, we need to understand everything about how it works." She approached a new section of crystal wall that had recently become active. The neural interface was different here, more complex. Every time she tried to connect with it, the sensations had been overwhelming. "Sarah," Rodriguez's voice held a note of warning. "The HFY scientists said that section contains the primary navigation systems. They've never seen anything like it." She smiled slightly. "Good thing we're not them, then." Taking a deep breath, she pressed her palm against the crystal surface and opened her mind to the connection. The response was immediate and intense. Information flooded into her consciousness, not just data, but experience. She saw stars wheeling past at impossible speeds, felt the quantum fields that the ship used to bend space itself. The precursors hadn't just built a ship. They'd created a way to share their understanding directly with other minds. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her free hand moving to steady herself against the wall. They didn't use engines or conventional drive systems. The whole ship, it's like a thought made real. It moves by manipulating quantum states on a massive scale. The room's lighting changed, crystals illuminating in complex patterns that matched the flow of information through her mind. New interfaces emerged from the walls, each one responding to her growing understanding. "The neural link," she continued, her voice filled with wonder. "It's not just for control. It's how they shared knowledge. The ship is teaching me how to fly it, how to understand what they built." Rodriguez moved closer, fascinated despite his concern. "How is that even possible?" "Because they designed it for minds like ours," Sarah said, understanding flowing through her like a river. "The HFY, their minds are enhanced with quantum computers and neural networks. But that's not what the precursors were looking for. They wanted pure consciousness, natural thought patterns that could adapt and grow." She gasped as a new level of connection opened, showing her things that made her previous understanding seem like a child's drawing. The ship doesn't just respond to our thoughts, it amplifies them, helps them grow into something more. It's not just a vehicle, it's a bridge between what we are and what we could become. The entire chamber was alive now with swirling patterns of light and energy. Through the neural link, Sarah could feel the ship's systems awakening, responding to her understanding with an eagerness that felt almost joyful. 7 days, she said, finally stepping back from the interface. Her eyes were bright with excitement and wonder. "We don't need 7 days. I can fly this ship now. And when we do..." She looked at Rodriguez with a smile that held both confidence and awe. "We're going to show them something they've never seen before." The ship's crystals pulsed in agreement, their light dancing through the chamber like stars coming to life. In 7 days, they would do more than just prove they could fly a precursor ship. They would show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology, but their ability to learn, to grow, and to see the universe in ways that more advanced species had forgotten. Dawn painted the desert sky in shades of gold as Sarah took her place at the ship's main interface. Through the neural link, she could feel every system humming with energy, ready to awaken after 50,000 years of sleep. Hundreds of alien ships hovered in the sky above, their crews watching and waiting. "All monitoring systems are active," Dr. Rodriguez reported from his station. "The HFY have their sensors trained on us, along with every other species in orbit." Sarah smiled, placing both hands on the crystal interface. "Let them watch," she said softly. "It's time to show them what this ship can really do." The neural connection bloomed in her mind, stronger and clearer than ever before. The ship's consciousness met hers like an old friend, eager to share its secrets. Through their link, she could feel the quantum fields that permeated space itself, could see the invisible threads that bound reality together. "Beginning power-up sequence," she announced, more for the benefit of the observers than necessity. The ship didn't need spoken commands. It responded directly to her thoughts, her intent. Light rippled through the crystal walls as systems activated in perfect harmony. The sand around the ship began to shift and swirl as energy fields took shape. Sarah felt a moment of pure joy through the neural link. The ship had waited so long to fly again. By the stars, someone whispered as the vessel rose from its ancient resting place. There was no roar of engines, no visible propulsion. The ship simply moved as gracefully as a thought. Sarah guided them higher, feeling the ship's eager response to her commands. The neural link showed her everything. Every field, every current of energy, every possibility. The ship wasn't just flying. It was dancing through quantum states, moving through space in ways that defied conventional physics. First Speaker Nelith's voice came through the communication system. Impossible. Our sensors show you're manipulating quantum fields on a macro scale. Such technology is beyond even theoretical understanding. Not beyond, Sarah replied, her voice filled with wonder as new knowledge flowed through the neural link. Just different. The precursors understood that consciousness itself is a quantum phenomenon. They built their technology to work with that natural connection, not against it. To demonstrate, she guided the ship through a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible. The vessel moved like light through crystal, each motion perfect and precise. The watching ships scrambled to track their movements as they danced through the sky. Then Sarah felt something new through the neural link. A deeper level of connection she hadn't accessed before. Understanding flooded her mind as ancient systems activated, showing her the ship's true purpose. Dr. Chen, Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with excitement. The energy readings, they're unlike anything we've ever seen. Sarah nodded, her eyes closed as she focused on the new connection. Watch this, she said softly. Through the neural link, she reached out to touch the quantum fields in a very specific way. Following patterns the ship was showing her. Space itself seemed to shimmer around them. A window of pure light opened in the sky, showing stars in configurations no human had ever seen. The ship had opened a gateway through space-time itself, using consciousness-directed quantum fields to bridge the gap between stars. The communication system erupted with shocked exclamations from the watching ships. Sarah opened her eyes, taking in the beautiful impossibility before them. This is what the precursors built, she announced to the stunned observers. Not just a ship, but a key to the stars themselves. And it was waiting for minds that could see beyond the limits of traditional technology. The ship's crystals pulsed with joy and pride as they hovered before the gateway. Humanity's first step into a much larger universe, shining before them like a new dawn. 1 month after the historic flight, Sarah stood in the ship's bridge, now permanently connected to a gleaming research facility built around it. The desert had been transformed into a center of galactic cooperation, with representatives from over 50 species working together to understand the precursor legacy. The latest neural compatibility tests are complete, Dr. Rodriguez said, bringing up a holographic display through one of the ship's interfaces. It's remarkable. Human minds are consistently able to form stable connections with the technology. Sarah nodded, watching the data flow through the crystal displays. Through the neural link, she could feel the ship's satisfaction with their progress. Over the past month, they'd made discoveries that had rewritten their understanding of both physics and consciousness. First Speaker Nalith has arrived for the briefing, a junior researcher announced. The Arctuary leader had become a regular presence at the facility, their initial skepticism transformed into genuine curiosity. Thank you for coming, Sarah greeted them as they entered the bridge. We've made some interesting discoveries about the precursor database. She placed her hand on the main interface, and the room filled with a galaxy-wide star map. Points of light indicated known precursor sites, each one now accessible through the quantum gateways they'd learned to create. These sites, she explained, they're not just random outposts. They form a network, each one designed to teach different aspects of precursor science and philosophy. But more than that, she paused, still amazed by what they'd discovered. We think we know what happened to them. The neural link flowed with information as she accessed the ancient records. The precursors didn't vanish or go extinct. They evolved. They found a way to transform consciousness itself, to transcend physical form through mastery of quantum mechanics. Nalif's expression showed rare emotion. And you believe humans are following a similar path? Not just humans, Sarah said, smiling. Anyone who can learn to think in new ways. The precursors left this technology as a guide, a way to help other species reach the same understanding. But it required minds that were still flexible, still open to radical new ways of thinking. The star map shifted, showing new data they'd discovered. Each site contains different pieces of their knowledge. Some focus on physics, others on biology or consciousness. They created a galactic university, waiting for students who could learn from it. Through the neural link, Sarah felt the ship's approval as she explained. The ancient vessel had become more than just a tool. It was a teacher, a guide to understanding the universe in ways that transcended traditional technology. We're establishing training programs, she continued. Teams of human pilots working with scientists from other species, learning to access and understand these sites. Together, we can unlock knowledge that neither of us could grasp alone. The display changed again, showing the first group of human alien teams preparing for their missions. Each human pilot would work with experts from other species, combining human neural compatibility with their advanced scientific understanding. The galaxy is changing, Nalith observed. The balance of power, the very nature of our civilization, is growing. Sarah completed the thought. Not shifting, not being disrupted, growing. The precursors didn't want to create dependencies or hierarchies. They wanted to show us all a path forward together. She looked out at the facility that had grown around them, where humans worked alongside beings from across the galaxy. The ship's crystals pulsed with warm light, its ancient purpose finally fulfilled. We're not just exploring space anymore, she said softly. We're exploring what it means to be conscious, to be alive. And maybe together, we'll find out what the precursors discovered when they took their final step into the unknown. The star map glowed above them, each point of light, a doorway to new understanding, new possibilities. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or subjects, but as teachers, students, and explorers on a journey that had only just begun.